Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Luiza Wojtowicz-Waga, and on behalf of the whole team at EduNation and EduNation Global, I would like to welcome you. Um, this is our, I don't know which in order webinar for English speakers. I hope that this is not your first time, but if it is, then please be so kind and let me know that you have never been and you have never attended EduNation or EduNation Global's webinar, and I will welcome you wholeheartedly, as I always welcome every single teacher who joins us. So please be so kind and tell us right in the comments where you're joining us from. I can see some lovely people from Poland, but I'm sure that there are also people from other countries. So please be so kind and let us know where you are joining us from. And today we will be talking about some teaching mistakes. I don't like very much the word mistake, but I will tell you a little bit about what I, as a teacher trainer and as a senior teacher in many schools and in many projects, which situations in the classroom I have been noticing and I have seen for quite a while in the classrooms, and I will tell you a little bit about why some of these situations might be seen as well, let's say, mistakes, or that they could be dealt with a little bit differently. Let me just very briefly see who's joining us and where you're joining us from. So we've got lovely people from Poland, we've got our friends from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia, from Croatia. Slovakia again, wonderful, wonderful. I hope that our other participants will also share with us the locations, because it is really truly we've got participants from Ukraine as well. Hello. This is truly exciting for, I think, both for me as the speaker here, as the trainer, and also for all the participants to see that you truly join us from all over, well, Europe, let's say, or almost, yeah, I think most of you are from Europe, but I also know that we have got participants joining us from outside Europe. So if there is also people from anywhere else, please tell us. All right. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that EduNation, probably those of you who are joining us from Poland, you know that EduNation has been running webinars for teachers in general, teachers of languages, not necessarily English teachers. For the last 6 years, every Tuesday, there is an option and a possibility to participate in a free teacher training session, Tuesday evening, 9:00 p.m. And once in a while, sometimes once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month, we run webinars in English for English teachers in Poland, but also for all the lovely English teachers who join us from around the world. And as you see, we have got quite a lot of friends already from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia, from Ukraine, Croatia today. The webinars are typically 60 minutes long, so you can expect me to be finishing at around 9:00 p.m. CET. And tomorrow, everybody who has registered for the webinar will receive a certificate and a link to the recording of this session. So if anything happens, if your child starts crying or your dog wants to be taken out, don't worry. There will be a recording for you sent tomorrow, so in your inboxes, email inboxes. Just please remember that because we send quite a lot of these, your inboxes may see us as unwanted emails, and therefore sometimes we end up not necessarily in your main inbox, but in spam or in offers in Gmail or in totally different places, not where we would like to be seen, but well, this is how inboxes function sometimes. Anyway, so just very briefly about me. I'm an English teacher. I have been an English teacher for over 25 years now, and I have also for a very, very long time functioned and worked as a senior teacher, as an academic consultant, as a director of studies, and as a teacher trainer. And one of the roles that I have loved in my life most was first observing teachers work and also training teachers to be better and more efficient. And I'm totally fascinated by processes of effective teaching, by processes of working with your students' memory, and also classroom management. And these topics that really make my heart burn. Classroom management, memory, efficient memory, and working so in such a way that the memory works better with your students, and also besides other topics these. So today we will be looking at situations that I see in classrooms, and situations that I have seen and I have been witnessing for a very, very long time. Such situations that, in my opinion, never change. Somehow teachers, they are completely unrelated with the passing time, and with unrelated with any development of you as teachers. Sometimes we just do certain things in the classroom because we are used to working this way, or because someone told us that it's a good idea, or because we have been taught this way. And from a teacher trainer point of view, from academic point of view, some of these situations may be seen as mistakes. But saying this or using the word mistake, I don't want to say that I treat these situations as some kind of sins. I see them more as room for improvement, as I always do with also with my students, with my English students. Mistakes are only are good, because thanks to the fact that we have made them, that we show that there is room for improvement, and we show that we develop, and we want to develop, we want to be better. So this is the attitude that I have got to the word mistake, and this is the attitude that I will be showing you throughout the session. All right, so there will be 10 such situations, and I will be such situations that I see as recurring mistakes. And we will in detail discuss these. I would like to encourage you to take active participation. So if in any moment you would like to add something, you would like to write something, you would like to, well, maybe disagree with me, which is perfectly fine. I like when people disagree with me in a kind way, of course. I will be looking at what's going on in the comments, and from time to time I will try to refer to what you have written or what you have said. So please, if there is anything you want to share with us, any questions, any contribution, then please do not hesitate, because that makes my heart warm, that there are people who really truly listen. I see that you are there, but you know how it is. Anyway, so here we go, 10 teaching mistakes that you should avoid. I already told you, and what to do with them, of course. I already told you that these will be situations that I have been witnessing for a very, very, very long time, of the last 20 years. From time to time, I will go to a classroom and see when some of these situations happening. So situation number 1 is related to the beginning and to the end. And what do I want to say by that? I will be talking a little bit about the psychology of memory, and working with your students' memory, so that you truly use the classroom time to its best potential. There is quite a lot of research done, and recurring research, so not just once, but recurring research done into the effective usage, let's say, of the beginning and the end of the of well, any situation really, but classroom in our situation, in our context. There is quite a lot of research that we can believe done into the importance of the beginning and of the end of a class, of a lesson, of a classroom time. And the sad thing about our classes and what we plan, what we plan in those classes, what we plan for this for the lessons to in our lesson plans, is that the beginning and the end are very often not planned to its best or to their best potential. And what I want to say by that is that what we very often do, unfortunately, as teachers, is that we do not correlate the beginning and the end. So these two moments have nothing to do with each other, and this should not happen in a good lesson plan. The beginning and the end should really be one story. The beginning and the end should open and close the same story. So what I want to say by that is that the way we should plan our lessons is that the very beginning of a lesson should be the time in which we set and specify lesson aims. We inform our students what our lesson aims are going to be. And at the very end of of each class, what we should do is we should check and we should verify whether these lesson aims have been completed, have been met by our students. So we open the door at the very beginning of the lesson and we close the door at the very end, but it's the door of the same story. Now, what I see very often when I go to observe lessons, to observe classes, is that the beginning is very often used for organizational situations, to check attendance, to chat a little bit with our students. That's all fine. And the very end is sometimes used to push one more activity, to try to squeeze one more thing in that limited time that we have in the classroom with our students. And it should actually not look this way. So next time when you plan a lesson, try to think about it. How will I begin with a blow and finish with a second blow, but that will be the blow of the same story. So we set aims at the very beginning, and at the very, very end, the final minutes, we devote to a summary of what was happening in the lesson, a summary of what students have learned, checking whether the aims that we have set have been met, have been completed, and therefore building one big story here. Now, why is this so important? This is not just a trick, not just a planning trick. It's important from the point of view of the psychology behind our memory. There are very, very strong memory effects which have been researched heavily, and two of these very strong memory effects are the effects related to the beginning and to the end. Research shows, and all experiments about it show, that we remember mostly what is, and best, what is happening at the beginning and what is happening at the very end of a, let's say, time unit, a situation, a training session, a lesson. So your students will remember, and there are memory curves that you can Google and you will see how they work. Your students will remember best what happened at the very beginning of the lesson and what happened at the very end of the lesson. They will remember a little bit less what was happening in the middle. There are a lot of memory effects that are important from the point of view of a teacher. These two are extremely, extremely strong. And now Penny Orr, I'm sure that you know who Penny Orr is. She says in one of her books, and I truly very much agree with that, that what you should do at the very beginning of the lesson is you should teach something new. You should teach something that is most difficult in that lesson at the very beginning of the lesson, in the first minutes of the lesson, and not wait with it until minute 20 or 25. And what I see happening in lessons is actually quite the opposite. So what we do at the very beginning, when students' memory is fresh, when students' energy is high, what we do is we do some revision, which is important, very, very important, but maybe not necessarily at the very beginning of the lesson. And I keep thinking, why are we doing this? Why do we check homework at the beginning of a lesson? Why do we revise at the beginning of a lesson? It seems maybe logical, but from the point of view of research done on human memory, we should not do that. The beginning of a lesson is time in which we should, and Penny Orr is totally 100% thumbs up for it, and I agree with that as well. We should teach something important, teach the crucial element of what we want to teach this lesson at the beginning. First set aims and then teach, and only then check homework when the students' energy is falling. And it always falls around minute 20-25. Who checks homework at the lesson? Oh, there are teachers who check homework at the lesson. And sometimes it is important. Sometimes you need to. But anyway, what I want to say is the less important things should be done later, in the middle of a lesson, not at the very beginning and not at the very end. And at the very end of the lesson, the last 5-6 minutes is the time for your students' retrieval practice. And this particular moment, the last 5-6 minutes, is the retrieval practice that should relate to that lesson that is finishing. So everything new that your students have learned needs to be summarized and retrieved in the last minutes of this lesson. Why? Google something that is called Ebbinghaus curve or forgetting curve, and you will understand that your students need to revise what they have learned in order to help them remember better. Your students need to revise what they have learned very, very soon after they have learned it. So ideally, in that lesson, the first revision should already happen. And now at the very end of the lesson, there comes a moment in which, in the last 5 minutes, let's say, what you should do is you should ask your students questions about what they remember, about what was important for them, about what was new, to check. Hi Hannah, good to see you. I was waiting for you to say hi to me. So this is what you should be devoting your the end of the lesson to. Not pushing one more exercise, not setting homework, but making sure that all your students have achieved the aims that you set at the beginning of a lesson, and that all your students have summarized, that they have reviewed and revised all the new things that happened in that lesson. The very end of each class is extremely, extremely important. And now when you read or learn about the results of research about these memory effects that I told you about, the memory effect related with the end of a time unit is stronger than the one with related to the beginning. So truly, the end of the lesson, from the point of view of memory, is the most important part of the lesson. And now think about your lesson planning. And I don't want you to be writing all of this right now, but just in your somewhere inside your thoughts in your head, try to honestly answer to yourselves, do I really truly plan the beginning of the beginning and the end of a lesson, so that I use its potential, uh, stemming from all these all the research done on memory. The beginning and the end are the most important moments of your lesson, every lesson. So remember about that next time you plan a lesson. So probably very, very, very soon. Okay, the next sin, or the next thing that I see as, well, maybe not huge sin, but little sin of teachers, is that we take exercises and we take activities, and we run them, do them the way the author has designed. And now we seem to be thinking, which is very respectful of us, that once the author has written something, has designed something, they probably know what they are doing. These are clever people employed by publishing houses. So we want to do these exercises the way these people have designed them. Now, with all due respect to all the authors, and I know a lot of material authors myself, fantastic people, very clever people, they don't know your students and they don't know your needs. So we take exercises, but from time to time we should really look at them, thinking, have this author planned the exercise to my students' best potential and to my students' best benefit? Should I not maybe rework this exercise a little bit, do it differently, run it differently? So this religious approach to the design, which I understand, because we respect authors, we think that they know better. I have a feeling that they do not know better, or at least not always. So is this the best way for this particular class? What I do very often is I change the form of an activity, the format. Sometimes I change the content. Sometimes I change the dynamics. Sometimes I will divide an exercise, and actually quite often when I see an exercise in a course book in which we have got 15 points running, I will not ask all my students to do these 15 points, but I will divide these 15 points into 3 groups of 5, and one group will do one part, second group will do the second part, the third part. Then they will mingle, they will exchange, and so on. I will just answer one question. How many mind-blowing ideas for the beginning and ending can you come up with? By no means do I mean mind-blowing, Kasia. By no means. It doesn't have to be. We don't need to be doing and striving for wow, the so-called wow effect every lesson. I think this is really not about mind-blowing. This is about proper methodology. So even if you just ask your students, close your eyes and tell me how much you remember from this lesson. Close your eyes and try to remind yourselves about 3 new words that you have learned. It's not a mind-blowing activity, but from what's going on in your student's brain, it's an extremely strong activity. So remember that it's not about the wow effect. It's about making your students think and making your students remember. Writing a word on a whiteboard, asking your students to repeat it, and then cleaning the whiteboard and asking your students to repeat and to try to remember what was in each clean space is not a mind-blowing activity, but a very strong activity at the very end of a lesson. So think about it. It doesn't really need to be mind-blowing. It can be just good methodology, good academic, proper academic activity, and it can be extremely simple as well. I hope that I have helped you with this comment. So changing the form, changing the, maybe just doing the beginning of an activity, maybe asking students to do this activity a little bit differently, just with reflection, what this particular class needs. Is this a test that my students will take best advantage of? Is this activity that very often what I do is I change completely texts, or the way the author wanted this text to be done with a class, because I think that they could do something more with it. I look at the text and I think, oh, what a fantastic text, but the vocabulary in this text, the vocabulary that the author has chosen for my students' work, I think hasn't been chosen best. That for this particular class, different collocations would be necessary to work on. So this is be open, be courageous, be brave, use authors' ideas, but also don't be afraid of changing them and doing them the way you think would be better, easier, or more difficult for your students. Sometimes that will be nice text, but the exercise is just too easy, for example. Now, the third thing that I see very often, and I would like to talk about, are the mistakes which are in the center of attention in classrooms. Now, what I want to say is that quite often, when I go to observe classes, I see situations in which students work in pairs, students work in groups, fantastic. Teacher walks around, monitors with a sheet of paper and writes things down. The whole procedure that I have just described is great. It's wonderful. But what happens later is the feedback session. And the feedback session mostly focuses around mistakes, which I understand, because this is one of the roles of us teachers, is to clarify things that students have not understood, correct mistakes, and so on. But I would very much like to encourage you to start paying attention, equal attention, to the positives. So when you monitor your students' work and you write these things down, from time to time, make a decision: this lesson or this exercise, this activity, I will only focus on the positives, and I will only thank my students for the beauties that they have produced. Now, sometimes you will read in books for teachers that when you give feedback on the positives, it's as if you gave feedback on the mistakes that never happened. So you draw students' attention to the beauties. And this is educationally an extremely strong element of you as a teacher. When you draw attention to one student's positive, all the other students hear it too. And this is, well, this works quite well with the student's ego. That's one thing. We like to be praised. We like to hear from important people that, and teachers are important, that we have done something well, that we have done something positively. But all the other students hear it too and see it written. So they don't need to see only mistakes. It's wonderful that they can see, oh, listen, Nicoletta or Kasia have just said this and that, and you write these beauties down, and they are equally strong, or probably even stronger to students than the mistakes that you have seen. So one idea is, in one lesson or in one part of a lesson, you pay attention only to the positives, not mistakes. You close your ears to mistakes. It's extremely difficult for some teachers. It's extremely difficult. So it's also kind of like a developmental activity, coaching activity for you as a teacher. Or what you can do is you can take a sheet of paper, divide it into two columns. One column will be divided to the positives, and the second column will be divided to the negatives. And you will try to balance the information that your students receive. Well, this is something that we need to work on, but these things were simply beautiful. So thank you very much. I hope that you like this idea. I know that you come from different countries, and I don't know what kind of approach is dominant or predominant in your country. I have a feeling that here in Poland, because I live in Poland and I work with Polish students mainly, we have a lot of these behavior types in which we focus on the negatives. And we are learning to do differently right now, but I would like to encourage you very, very much to work not only on your students' deficits, but work on your students' strengths. And this is an and also when you speak to your students' parents, when you have parent meetings, focusing on what their children have done well first and foremost is extremely important. And it also it's a crucial moment in which motivation and relationship is built, when you focus on people's positives. So I can see that there is Hanka has written something about the approach and working on the positives, and it works very well with little children. It works very well with little children, teenagers, adults, young adults, seniors. It works very well with teachers too. Teachers also want to know that they have done something well. I think it's just a human thing. We want to know that we have done something well. It doesn't mean that we should not hear about things that we have not done well, but think about this balance. Think about, and I have a feeling that here in Poland, we have a bias towards focusing on the negative, this kind of way of thinking, like, why should I? Sometimes I hear parents or people say it, why should I say about the positives? It's obvious that these things are positive. Let's focus on the negative. And I really don't think that these things are obvious, that positives are obvious. So also works in classroom management. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think it requires some kind of change in our head a little bit. Think about you as parents. If you have got your own children, I don't mean students in the classes that you teach, but your private children in your homes, also this working with them this way, the focusing on all the good things that they have done. And sometimes, unfortunately, I also hear, but there is, what if, like a comment, a teacher's comment, what if there is nothing good to focus on? And then it makes my heart stop for a second because I really don't think that it's possible, I don't think that it is possible that there is nothing good to see. If someone thinks this way, there is really a lot of work to be done here in our heads and in our attitude and approach to students. But I'm sure that this is not about you. Now, situation number 4 that I have seen on a million occasions, and I think we need to think about it closer and look at it closer, is that sometimes we play games with our students that are truly meant, in my opinion, only to kill time, and the playing is for playing sake. And what I mean by that is that, for example, games in which, let's say, the card distribution, the preparation, the organization of the game takes a very, very long time, equally long or longer than playing itself. So this is a problematic situation number 1. A problematic situation number 2 is that a game in which, let's imagine, one student is standing, showing something with their body, or even talking, and the second student, after 2 or 3 minutes, says table. because the word to guess was table. And so when I see games like that played in the classes that I observe, I think we really need to rethink the preparation time, the sense of such long organizational, distribution of cards, shuffling, and God knows what else, and the production that language production that is actually happening in that classroom. So a game as such, like charades, for example, or hangman, they are good when you go on a camp, when you're sitting by the campfire, and or in the afternoon, you've got 5 or 6 minutes to kill. But when you teach a class twice a week for 60 minutes, I really think that that your aim should be to squeeze these 60 minutes as much as possible to give your students an option to produce language and to process language as much as possible. So let's not kill time with the too much organizational issues, card distribution, preparation, 5 minutes passed, only 55 minutes of the lesson to go. So these are the questions that you should ask yourselves. How many students participated in this game and for how long? Sometimes in these games, there will be only one person talking, usually the strongest student, for whom speaking is never an issue, or with such personality that speaking is not an issue, talking, and the other ones will be drawing or will be not saying anything or saying just one word. That kind of game, well, I would reconsider. How much actual communication was there? How much preparation did it require? Now, if you spend an hour at home preparing for a game that will take your students 10 minutes, I think we need to reconsider and how much time was lost in the particular lesson time or of the particular lesson time for the students to get for the games to be organized. Remember that a game in a language classroom, a game is a good idea if it makes your students use language productively, receptively, ideally both, with equal production distribution. This was extremely complicated, what I've just said. What I want to say is that students should participate in a game equally. There should be no situations in games in which only one student is really, truly engaged with the language preparation processing and the other ones do not that much. So remember about that. A game is something different than a game in a language classroom. A game in a language classroom should really evolve around language reception and production. Okay, now the fifth situation that I see very, very regularly dealt with in a problematic way are instructions. Now, instructions, and this is something that, again, something to do with classroom management, something that I have seen and I have spoken to really hundreds of students, of teachers right now about. We need to understand that the main aim and the moment in which instructions are given is the moment in which you have got attention of all your students at you. Which means that there are moments in which we should not give instructions because your students' attention is everywhere else but not with you. So now when you see situations like you need to give instructions, but also you need to divide students into groups. What to do first? Divide them into groups or give instructions? Give instructions first, because once you divide your students into groups, into pairs, into groups of 3, they will focus so much on the social aspect of this situation that you will lose 50% of them. I mean, 50% of your students will be gone with their attention. And what it will mean is that you will need to repeat the instructions and then repeat them again, and probably some of them will go completely insanely wrong. What you need to do is, first of all, you need to pay attention. You need to be sure that your students' attention is with you. You give instructions, and only then divide your students into groups or into pairs or into groups of 3 or into mini teams, and so on and so forth, not vice versa. Once you divide your students into groups, one student will be happy that they are with student B. Student C will be extremely unhappy that they are with student D. They will start shouting, I don't want to work with him or her. Can I work with student D? Can you reshuffle us? And so on and so forth. And the whole instructions have gone wrong or forgotten or not heard. The same story with instructions versus distribution of handouts. Once you distribute handouts or activities, your students are so much into what they need. They already know what they need to do, or they think they know what they need to do, and your instructions are not heard because they have already started. So the correct order is, first you give instructions and then you distribute handouts. So first, attention at you, then instructions, and then group division. First, attention at you, then instructions, and then distribution of handouts, and not the other way around. Now, about the language of instructions, depending on your students' level, if they can handle instructions in English, give them in English. If you have a feeling that they will have a problem handling instructions in English, you can introduce the so-called L1. So in my case, it will be Polish. In your case, it will be Czech, Slovak, Croatian, and you can do it. You can instruct your students in the so-called sandwich way. So you give the English instruction, then you help them a little bit, but not fully, but a little bit with their L1. So Polish in my case, and you finish with repeating the instructions in English again. What I like doing very much, if my students can handle English instructions, I teach students on higher levels, so typically they're fine. I give instructions, but I do not repeat these instructions myself. I give instructions and I ask a student to repeat what we need, what their job is right now, what they will be doing right now. And typically, a student repeats in a simpler way than I have instructed. So for all the other students, it is important that one of them repeated the instructions. So teacher instruction and then student. So I say, for example, Hanka, so what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we supposed to do right now? What is your task right now? And then Hanka repeats. Sorry, Hanka, but I like calling you in the webinars. And then Hanka repeats, and we check whether really everyone has understood. Whether, first of all, Hanka has understood the instruction as the way I would like them to be understood, and then everyone else checks whether they have understood exactly the same as the student who repeated. So remember instructions. First of all, why is it so important? Well, it limits your frustration, it limits your students' frustration, and again, we are fighting for time. Once your students have got instructions wrong, or you need to repeat again and again and again because they were somewhere else with their attention, some time is lost. And I'm sure that you are all fighting for time. Every single minute is important, so this will simply help you very much. All right, next, reading aloud. Whew, this is always a huge topic for discussion. with teachers. Should we read aloud? Should we not? And a lot has been written about it. A lot has been said about it. The general consensus of in methodology right now is that we should read aloud or ask students to read aloud those texts that we would in real life read aloud. So we do not read aloud in situations in which we want our students to practice pronunciation. This is not the and I mean texts. So if you want your students to practice pronunciation, of course you can ask them to read aloud, but not texts, sentences that were prepared especially to practice particular sounds, vowels, consonants, linking, so processes, the pronunciation processes, and so on, but not texts. Texts only those that in real life, in the actual life outside classroom, would be read aloud. So what do we read aloud? Sometimes we read news. Sometimes we read news. Sometimes we read fairy tales, but very, very, very rarely. Now, what happens when you read aloud is that you focus, as a student, you focus on the sound so much that you do not focus on the meaning. And the idea of reading is to understand the meaning and not focus on the sound. So if your students want to read aloud, tell them, have a contract with them, have a rule with them that there will be a moment in the classroom in which we will read aloud to practice pronunciation, and then you will prepare sentences and there will be a moment for that, but there will be a time for reading quietly because you need to focus on the meaning. And now also in situations in which your students' reading comprehension will be checked, in exams, for example, nobody will allow them to read aloud. So making them used to reading aloud will also be a negative aspect in the moment in which in an exam they will need to read aloud, and no one will allow them to read aloud then. So don't get them used to doing things that will in the future be problematic. And I hope this argument is also quite important. Now, two more points connected with each other, two more situations which are problematic, is that exercises are done only once, and then we do not repeat something because we have done it. So I mentioned a lot, and I keep mentioning in all the sessions that I run, in the training sessions that I run, the memory effects. And one of the strongest memory effects, besides these that I've already mentioned today, so the beginning and the end of the lesson, is repetition, revision, retrieval practice. Yes, Nicoletta, advertising or poems, we read aloud. And of course, if you have a poem to read, ask your students to read this poem aloud. Absolutely, I agree with you. There are texts that we read aloud in real life, absolutely. But coming back to the repetition and revision. So I am extremely, extremely sad looking at all the beautiful exercises, all the fantastic texts, all the vocabulary that happens and is presented to your students once only. And I keep thinking about how to deal with it, what to do with it, so that it actually doesn't happen. And think about it. Think of all the great texts that you have covered with your students in this semester, for example. It's really sad that they will never come back to your lesson agenda. And now what I like doing very much is I like having a box or a plastic sleeve in which all the nice things end up in. I don't know if this was a grammatical sentence that I've just said. So everything, like an extra copy, new words, parts of an exercise that I have got left, I put them in this box, or I put them in the plastic sleeve. And now, so of course, after one lesson, there will be only 2-3 sheets of paper with words, with collocations, with an extra copy of an activity that we have done, and a spare copy that I've got left. After some other lessons, there will be more and more, and the box will get heavier, or the plastic sleeve will get thicker. But now, what do I do with it later? There always, in every lesson, is a moment in which your students need a short break, but not break as such, but a break between one exercise and another. They need an energizer. They need just to change the topic for a moment. And then I enter with my box or with my plastic sleeve, and I ask students, please draw a sheet of paper from my box, and tell me what you see there. So they will randomly select something that can be a vocabulary, it can be a word, can be a collocation, can be a part of a grammatical exercise, can be a short part of a text. And we try to remember, all of us, or students in pairs, or all of us in the class, what this was, what it meant, what the rule was in this exercise, when we did it, and so on and so forth. So this helps me, this idea of a plastic sleeve with all these extras, or a box. If I have a lesson online, or a class online, I will have all the material placed in Padlet or in Wakelet. I use Wakelet mainly, as you probably know, because I was talking about it in one of the sessions before. And then randomly, we try to remember and retrieve from our memory what this word or collocation meant. If what a student picks is a grammatical exercise, we try to remember the rule. We try to fill out a sentence in this exercise. So every single lesson, there is a moment in which we try to retrieve something from the past, because I very, very much think that we should really not do everything once only. And of course, we don't have time to be reviewing everything all the time, but we will have time to have these moments of a student drawing something and trying to remember what it was, or selecting something and trying to remember what it was. And if he or she doesn't remember, that's all okay, because we can ask someone else, we can work in pairs, we can ask a teacher to help us with our memory, and so on. So please remember, if you see good text, if you have good text, if you have a test with your students, that the test retrieval is an extremely important element. So you do a test once, and then after 2 weeks, you take a part of this test, and you do it with your students again. And of course, your students will say, but I think we've done it. And you say, well, of course we've done it. Let's see how we do it again. I know that we've done it. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm doing this because your memory, your synapses in your brain, they will thank you, and they will remember better, because you have just been exposed to the same thing again. And our brain likes it. Our memory likes it. Repetition, revision, retrieval. So doing the same exercises after 2-3 weeks, sometimes your students will say, I remember that we've done it, but I can't remember what should be there. And then you can tell them, well, so take out your text from 3 weeks ago and see. And then this is all fine. Even if they don't remember, it's all fine, because this revision will help them bring these things back to their memory, and hopefully they will remember better later on. Now, number 9 is no tolerance for silence. Oh Lord, I see this happening all the time, especially that I go to observe lessons, and it always raises the level of stress of a teacher. So we ask a question, and then no one answers immediately. So we don't really tolerate this silence so well. So we repeat this question, or we paraphrase the question again. We review the what we have said, or we answer ourselves. Now, my big request would be try to tolerate silence a little bit longer. I remember many years ago, I had this problem, and someone taught me two methods of tolerating silence better. And first of all, why should we tolerate silence? Because people think in silence, people need silence to process what they want to say. So rule number one or trick number one that someone taught me was that behind my back I keep my hand and I count to 10. And then if no one answers by 10, I will try to do something about it. So paraphrase, rephrase, or answer myself. And the second trick is the so-called finger log. So you ask a question and you stand like that. So you physically remind yourself that you should not speak right now. Students will not pay attention to that because they will think that you are just waiting. Silence is extremely important. Also, what is important is that when you ask a question and you really want everybody to think about an answer, ask your students not to raise their hands, because there is this effect that once a student raises their hand, a lot of other students stop thinking because they are waiting for a teacher to ask that particular person who has just raised hand. So there is this mechanism, and in many books will you read that it is better to ask your students to keep their hands down, although there is this automatic reaction, oh, I know, but we try to ask your students to lower their hands, and that you will nominate someone to answer, and not that they don't shout out the answers once they know them, because we need we need this time. Many people need silence to think. So please tolerate your silence. And the last point is faith in declaration. So believing that when someone says they understand, they really understand. First of all, what I would like to kindly ask you is to rethink asking students the question, do you understand? When you ask someone if they understand, they will either say nothing, that their faces, very often we see that in classrooms, that students don't really react in any way to that question, or that they will say that if they believe that they understand, they will say yes, they do, and then they go to do an exercise and they do it in a wrong way. So not always, of course. I mean, I'm exaggerating heavily right now, but the truth is, asking people if they understand does not give you any reliable answer, anything that you can really believe in. So it is much better to ask your students the so-called comprehension check questions, rather than asking them if they understand. Faith in declarations is a mistake, is a teacher mistake. So, for example, what I could do is I could ask my students, so do you understand the difference between for and since with the present perfect? And they will say, yeah, we understand. You have explained it to us, yeah. And then I can only believe if it's true or not true. What I can do differently is I can tell them, so when I say my childhood, for or since 1992, for or since 2 weeks, for or since, and by asking them these comprehension check questions, so I really check if they have understood or not, and not asking them if they understand, because I know that they would like to. If they answer yes, we understand, I'm pretty sure that they really believe so. But I really need to know, be 100% sure that they do. Okay, listen, we have finished 10 points, and look at the timing. It is 1 minute before 9. I would like to thank you very much for your very, very, very active participation. Thank you. Renata is asking about number 7. Number 7 was correlated with, look, I will just quickly, I was correlated, what am I saying? Correlated with number 8, so that we do exercises only once and we explain things only once. So these number 7, sorry if that was not clear, what the number 7 and number 8, which are two situations that they are quite the same. So what I would like you to the last thing that I would like to tell you is that here at EduNation, we have got quite a lot of projects and quite a lot of courses which help teachers teach better, be better teachers, be more effective teachers. And I would like to share with you today one of these courses. So if you would kindly like to stay and listen for 2 more minutes, it would be fantastic. Now, there is a one of the projects that we have prepared for teachers of English is a course that with the title of Effective Teaching. Now, this is a course that I have prepared for our for the teachers in Poland and abroad. It has got 20 lessons, and it is in English, of course, and it's a VOD course. So you have got lessons and recordings that you can watch whenever you have got the time. And now let me show you what this course is about. Of course, the whole course, all the 20 lessons, are about the effective teaching and how to be an effective teacher. So we have got a module about human memory and lessons on how human memory works, the effects of that I have mentioned today, but quite many more that I mentioned today. There is a lesson on memory rhythms. There is a lesson on Miller's magic number 7. So how many vocabulary items we should introduce in one lesson. Magic number 4. 12 memory effects. So I mentioned today 2. There are 12, so more in the course. And there is a module on the rules of effective teaching. So I will deal with some myths that teachers believe in. I will show you the forgetting curve, something that I mentioned today. I will be talking to you about how the brain processes information on 3 levels and how we should involve these 3 levels in our teaching, how to manipulate your students' learning time, and the basic rules of effective teaching. And then the second module deals with what your students must know. So how to prepare your students to be better students related to the food that they eat, the sport, the lifestyle, what to tell them so that they learn effectively, the learning strategies, the mnemotechniques that they need to introduce in their learning, the retrieval strategies, and many methods in the last module, which help your students be better at what they do. And now what I would like to say is that this course right now, for all of you who are right now here in the webinar, we always have got a surprise for those of you who come, who are with us in our live sessions. And if you go, let me just click on the address, the email, the web page address, and I will write to you the in the comment. Here we go. So you've got the link where you go to edunation.com.pl effective teaching. You've got the address in the comments right now. Today, for those of you who are in the live session, we have got an promo code effective. And those of you who are from Poland, you click on the PLN and it will lower the price by 100 PLN. Those of you who go to the Euro section, those of you who pay from outside Poland, the promo code effective will lower the price by 20 euro. So I hope that you find it a nice gift from us. The course is fantastic. It's extremely practical, totally practical, also a little bit theoretical, but there is nothing better than nothing more practical than good theory, as they say. So I hope that you will take advantage of today, of this offer, and of the course itself. And now one more time. Yes. Okay. So I am removing this. Thank you very much for today. Thank you very much for today's session. What I would like to say is that until the end of summer, we will have 4 more webinars for you. There will be one webinar in May, which will be run by me, June with Anna Popławska, July with me again, and August with Anna Popławska again. And I mean the English-speaking webinars. So we're not finishing. There will be more topics on the edunation.global webpage very soon, because we have just finished preparing them. So you can expect information very soon, also in your emails, inviting you to those webinars. I hope that you have had a good session today, that it was practical, and you have discovered something that will help you be better teachers, because this is what we here at Edunation want to do. We want to give you only practical, lesson changing and life changing to a certain extent tips and practical ideas. So thank you very much. Thank you that you have stayed 6 minutes longer than 9:00 p.m. And I hope to see you in the course. I hope to see you in the next webinar. And I wish you good night. Thank you very much.